Goulburn Death Row, the harsh reality of Australian inmates. At exactly 5:30 every morning, a loud metal sound cuts through the silence. Clang. Heavy doors slide open. Keys shake. Boots walk slowly down a long, cold hallway. Inside small concrete cells, men wake up on thin beds. Some stare at the ceiling. Some whisper prayers. Some hold photos of their families. This is not a movie. This is not fiction. This is real life. This is Death Row inside Goulburn Prison in Australia. A place where time feels frozen. A place where every day feels the same. A place where some men wait for years, not knowing if they will ever walk free again. Today, you are going inside. Not through rumors. Not through movies. But through real stories. This is Goulburn Death Row, the harsh reality of Australian inmates. And what you are about to hear will stay in your mind for a long time. Entering Goulburn, a world behind steel. Goulburn Correctional Centre sits quietly in New South Wales, Australia. From the outside, it looks like a normal building. Grey walls. Tall fences. Security cameras watching every corner. But inside, it is a different world. A world made of concrete, steel, and silence. This prison is one of the most secure in the entire country. Some of Australia's most dangerous and most talked about prisoners have passed through here. And for many years, Goulburn held men who were sentenced to die. Men on death row. Men whose future was decided by a court. Men who woke up every day not knowing if today could be their last. When a new inmate arrived at Goulburn, the process was slow and scary. First, the van stopped at a tall metal gate. The gate opened. Then closed. Then another gate opened. Then closed again. Each door felt like a final goodbye to freedom. Inside, officers searched everything. Shoes, clothes, hair, mouth. Even small papers were checked. Nothing was trusted. Then the inmate was given prison clothes. Plain. Loose. No style. No color. Just fabric to show, you belong here now. After that, the walk began. Down long hallways. Past locked doors. Past other prisoners watching quietly. No one talked. No one smiled. Everyone knew why he was here. Death row inmates were kept separate. They were placed in special units. Units with tighter rules. More cameras. More guards. Less freedom. Each cell was small. About the size of a parking space. A bed. A toilet. A small sink. A tiny window with thick bars. No view of the outside world. Only sky. Sometimes, if you were lucky, lights stayed on for many hours. Sometimes all night. Sleep was never easy. The air felt heavy, like fear was floating inside it. Many inmates said the first night was the worst. The silence was too loud. You could hear other men breathing. Someone crying quietly. Someone talking to himself. Someone praying. Some banging on walls. Some begging guards for water. Some begging God for another chance. There were no phones. No internet. No normal life. Only time. Slow. Painful. Endless time. On death row, days moved differently. Breakfast came early. Usually bread and tea. Sometimes porridge. Nothing special. Then lockup. Doors closed again. Men stayed in their cells for hours. Reading old books. Writing letters. Staring at walls. Thinking. Thinking too much. Thinking about mistakes. Thinking about family. Thinking about victims. Thinking about courtrooms. Thinking about words like guilty, sentence, execution. Some inmates kept calendars. They crossed off days. Some stopped counting. It hurt too much. Visits were rare. Family had to travel far. Security checks took hours. Sometimes visits were cancelled without warning. When visits happened, there was glass. Phones. No hugs. No handshakes. Just voices through plastic. Mothers cried. Wives cried. Children asked questions. Daddy, when are you coming home? Most times, there was no answer. Guards were always nearby. Watching. Listening. Writing reports. Nothing was private. Even feelings were dangerous. Showing weakness could make you a target. Showing anger could bring punishment. So many men learned to hide everything. Smile when sad. Stay quiet when scared. Act strong when broken. Some prisoners were guilty. Some were not. Some admitted their crimes. Some said they were innocent. But on death row, the system treated them the same. Everyone wore the same clothes. Everyone ate the same food. Everyone slept in the same small cells. Everyone waited. Waiting was the hardest part. Not knowing. Not hearing news. Not understanding when things would change. Weeks turned into months. Months into years. Some men spent more than 10 years waiting. Their hair turned gray. Their voices changed. Their parents died. Their children grew up. Life outside kept moving. Life inside stood still. And every morning, at 5:30, the keys came again. The doors opened again. And the waiting continued. This was only the beginning. Because inside Goulburn, the real battle was not just against the prison. It was against the mind. And in the next chapter, we will go deeper. Into fear. Into loneliness. Into what really happens when a man knows his life could end behind these walls. The mind prison, when fear never sleeps. Inside Goulburn death row, the walls were strong. The doors were thick. The locks were heavy. But the strongest prison was not made of metal. It was made inside the mind. Every man on death row carried 2 prisons. One around his body. And one inside his head. From the first night, fear became a constant guest. It never left. It sat on the bed. It stood in the corner. It followed every thought. Some inmates tried to be brave. They told themselves, I will survive. I will appeal. I will win my case. I will go home. But late at night, when the lights were low, when the guards stopped walking, when the prison became quiet, those thoughts disappeared, and fear took over. Many men could not sleep. They lay on their beds, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, listening to every sound. A door closing, footsteps, keys, a cough, a shout. Every noise felt important. Every noise felt dangerous. Some men thought, is this it? Are they coming for me? Is today the day? Even though Australia later stopped executions, many inmates on death row lived for years believing death was still possible. No one explained things clearly. No one promised safety. So the fear stayed. Some prisoners had nightmares. They dreamed of courtrooms, judges, victims, news cameras, execution rooms. They woke up sweating, heart racing, hands shaking. No one comforted them. No one held them. In prison, you handle pain alone. Loneliness was everywhere. Even when surrounded by people, men felt alone. They were locked in cells, separated, controlled. They could not choose when to eat, when to sleep, when to walk, when to talk. Every choice was taken away. That made many feel small, powerless, invisible. Some stopped caring. They stopped cleaning their cells, stopped shaving, stopped writing letters, stopped talking. They became quiet shadows, just existing, not living. Some men talked to themselves, out loud, to remember their voices, to feel human. Others talked to walls, tapped codes, Morse signals, knocks. 3 taps meant hello. 2 taps meant, are you okay? 1 long tap meant, I'm here. This was how friendships were made. Without seeing faces. Without shaking hands. Just through sound. Trust was rare. On death row, you never knew who to trust. Some inmates worked with guards. Some spread rumors. Some stole. Some lied. So most men stayed to themselves. Better to be alone than betrayed. But being alone too long breaks a person. Slowly. Quietly. Like water wearing down stone. Depression was common. Many men felt empty. They woke up tired. Ate without taste. Spoke without feeling. Some cried silently at night, biting their lips, covering their faces with blankets, so no one would hear. Crying in prison was dangerous. Others could see it as weakness, and weakness invited trouble. Some men became angry instead. They punched walls, yelled at guards, smashed cups, kicked doors. Anger felt better than sadness. At least anger felt strong. But anger brought punishment. Solitary confinement. Loss of visits. Loss of privileges. More isolation. More silence. More darkness. Some inmates tried to stay sane. They made routines. Every day, same time. Wake up. Wash face. Fold bed. Exercise. Read. Write. Pray. Sleep. Repeat. Routine gave them control. Small control. But still control. Some read the same book dozens of times. The Bible. Old novels. Newspapers from months ago. They memorized pages. They remembered lines. Stories became escape doors. For a few minutes, they were not prisoners. They were travelers. Heroes. Normal people. Some wrote letters every day. To parents. To children. To old friends. To lawyers. Sometimes no one replied. Weeks passed. Months passed. Silences grew. That hurt more than insults. Some families stopped visiting. Travel was expensive. Shame was heavy. Life was busy. Prison was far. So connections slowly died. And with them, hope. Phone calls were short. Expensive. Timed. Hello. Yes, I'm fine. I miss you. I love you. Time's up. Click. That was it. 1 minute of love. Then back to concrete. Many inmates felt forgotten. By society. By government. By media. By everyone. They felt like mistakes thrown away. Hidden behind walls. So people would not have to see them. Some asked themselves, am I still a person? Or just a number? Each man had a number. On files. On doors. On clothes. Names mattered less. Numbers mattered more. That changed how they saw themselves. Some lost their identity. They forgot who they were before prison. Forgot their dreams. Forgot their favorite foods. Forgot their favorite songs. They became inmate. Nothing else. But not everyone broke. Some became stronger inside. They learned patience. They learned control. They learned to forgive themselves. They studied law. They prepared appeals. They fought quietly. They believed in justice. They believed in change. They believed in tomorrow. Even when tomorrow looked impossible. One former inmate later said, "Death row teaches you how strong the human mind can be, and how weak. You can survive hell. But hell leaves marks. And those marks never fully disappear. Because inside Goulburn, the biggest punishment was not chains. Not bars. Not guards. It was waking up every day, and fighting your own thoughts. And in the next chapter, We will enter the daily life, the rules, the discipline, the hidden conflicts, and how survival really worked inside death row. Daily life, rules, routines, and survival. Inside Goulburn death row, every day followed the same pattern. Not because inmates wanted it that way, but because the prison demanded it. Order was everything. Control was everything. Nothing happened by accident. Nothing happened freely. The day began before the sun fully rose. Around 5:30 a.m., keys started shaking. Boots hit the floor. Metal doors opened. One by one. Clang, clang, clang. Guards walked past each cell, looking inside, counting bodies, making sure everyone was alive. This was called head count. It happened many times a day. Morning, afternoon, night. Sometimes in the middle of sleep. A bright light would shine into the cell. Stand up. Inmate, show yourself. If you were sick, tired, sad, it did not matter. You stood up. You showed your face. You proved you still existed. Breakfast came next. A tray slid through a small opening. Bread, tea, sometimes cereal, sometimes fruit. Cold most days. Hot only if you were lucky. No choices. No menu. You ate what you got. Or you went hungry. After breakfast, most inmates were locked in again. Death row prisoners had very little movement. They were not allowed to mix freely. They were considered high risk. So freedom was limited. Some days, inmates were allowed out for exercise. 1 hour. Sometimes less. They walked into a small yard. High walls. Wire fences. No grass. No trees. Just concrete and sky. This was their outside. Some walked in circles. Some stretched. Some sat quietly. Some stared up at clouds, trying to imagine another life. Guards watched from towers, from corners, from behind glass. Every movement was seen. Every word was heard. Talking too much could cause trouble. So many men stayed silent. When exercise time ended, it was back inside. Doors closed. Silence returned. Inside their cells, men tried to fill time. Some did push-ups, sit-ups, squats, using the floor, using the bed, using the wall. They trained their bodies to protect their minds. Some cleaned constantly, wiping walls, scrubbing sinks, arranging items neatly. Cleanliness gave a sense of control. Some wrote journals, secret thoughts, private pain, hidden under mattresses, hidden in books. If guards found them, they could be taken away. So writing was risky, but many still did it, because not writing felt worse. Education programs were limited. Some inmates studied basic math, English, law books. They wanted to understand their cases, to find mistakes, to fight back. Some became their own lawyers, learning words like appeal, evidence, procedure, testimony. Hope lived in these words. Meals came 3 times a day. Lunch, dinner, simple food, rice, meat, vegetables, sometimes undercooked, sometimes tasteless. But food was important. Food was comfort. Food was routine. Food was something to look forward to. Some inmates traded food, bread for sugar, fruit for tea. Small deals, small economies. Prison had its own money system. Cigarettes used to be popular. Later, snacks, phone credits. Everything had value. Nothing was free. Respect was the most important currency. Disrespect could start fights. Looking too long. Speaking wrongly. Touching someone's property. Even stepping in front of someone all could cause problems. On death row, fights were rare but serious. Because punishments were harsh. If violence happened, lockdown followed. No exercise. No visits. No calls. More isolation. So most men avoided trouble. They kept to themselves. They followed unwritten rules. Don't snitch. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't show fear. Don't disrespect. Breaking these rules could make life miserable. Guards had power. Some were fair. Some were strict. Some were kind. Some were cold. Inmates learned quickly who was who. A good guard could make life easier. A bad guard could make life hell. Some guards treated prisoners like humans. They said hello. They listened. They joked sometimes. Others treated them like objects. Numbers. Problems. Burden. Those guards shouted. Threatened. Punished quickly. Complaints rarely helped. The system protected itself. Visits were the highlight of the week. When allowed, men shaved, cleaned cells, wore their best clothes, prepared mentally, because seeing family was emotional. Some smiled, some cried, some froze, some couldn't speak. After visits, many felt worse, because it reminded them of what they lost. Some inmates avoided visits. It hurt too much. Phone calls were short and controlled. A guard nearby. A clock ticking. Every word counted. No privacy. No secrets. Religion became important for many. Prayer. Bible reading. Quiet reflection. Some found peace in faith. Some found forgiveness. Some found strength. Others lost faith completely. They asked, "Why me? Why this life? Why now?" No one answered. Nighttime was the hardest. After dinner, after last count, lights dimmed, silence returned. Men lay in beds, thinking, remembering, regretting, hoping, fearing. Some listened to radios. Low volume. Music helped. It reminded them of the outside, of freedom, of youth, of love. Some fell asleep quickly, from exhaustion. Others stayed awake for hours, talking to themselves, planning appeals, reliving trials, imagining different endings. Every day was the same, but every day felt heavy, because behind this routine, this order, this discipline, was one truth. No matter how well you behaved, no matter how strong you were still trapped, still waiting, still uncertain. And in the next chapter, we will look at justice, appeals, mistakes, wrongful convictions, and the men who said, "I don't belong here." Justice, appeals, and the fight to stay alive. Inside Goulburn death row, hope did not come from freedom. It came from paper, from files, from court letters, from legal words written in black ink. For many inmates, the courtroom never really ended. Even after the sentence, even after the prison doors closed, the fight continued. It moved from the judge's bench, to tiny prison desks, to worn-out law books, to long nights spent reading legal papers under dim lights. Every man on death row had a story, a case, a file, a thick folder filled with police reports, witness statements, and court decisions. Some files were small, some were huge. Thousands of pages, years of arguments, years of mistakes, years of pain. Many inmates believed their trials were unfair. Some said evidence was weak. Some said witnesses lied. Some said lawyers failed them. Some said police rushed investigations. Some said important facts were ignored. Whether true or not, once you were sentenced, proving innocence was extremely hard. Appeals were the only door left. An appeal is when a prisoner asks a higher court to look again at his case. To check for errors. To check for unfairness. To check for injustice. But appeals were slow. Very slow. Sometimes one appeal took years. Paperwork moved slowly. Judges were busy. Lawyers were expensive. Time passed. Hair turned gray. Parents died. Children grew up. While files sat on desks. Many prisoners could not afford good lawyers. So they relied on legal aid. Overworked. Underpaid. Too many cases. Too little time. Some lawyers tried their best. Others barely visited. Some inmates waited months for replies. Some never got them. So many learned law themselves. They studied day and night. They memorized court rules. They learned how to write formal letters. How to quote past cases. How to argue properly. A mistake in one word could destroy everything. So they were careful. Precise. Patient. One wrong sentence could mean another year inside. Some inmates found new evidence. Old witnesses changed stories. New technology tested old samples. DNA testing helped some prisoners years later. It proved innocence. It exposed lies. It showed mistakes. A few men were released. After spending 10, 15, even 20 years locked up. They walked out old. Broken. Confused. Free, but damaged. But for every man freed, many stayed. Denied. Rejected. Ignored. Appeal dismissed. These words crushed hearts. When letters arrived, hands shook. Some men couldn't open them. They waited hours, preparing for bad news. When rejection came, some collapsed, cried, screamed, went silent. Some stopped trying. They said, "What's the point?" Others became more determined. "I will never give up. I will fight forever." Wrongful conviction was a real fear. Many inmates believed innocent men were on death row. History showed it happened before. People were convicted on weak evidence, on false confessions, on bad witnesses, on pressure. Fear made people say things they did not mean. Police sometimes made mistakes. Courts sometimes trusted the wrong people. And prisoners paid the price. One former inmate said, "The worst pain is not prison. It is knowing you didn't do it, and nobody believes you." Families also fought. Mothers wrote letters. Fathers visited politicians. Sisters contacted journalists. They begged for attention, for investigation, for truth. Some stories reached the media, newspapers, TV shows, documentaries. Public pressure helped reopen cases. Light entered dark rooms. But most cases stayed hidden. No cameras. No headlines. No help. Just silence. Australia eventually ended the death penalty. Executions stopped. Sentences were changed. Many death row inmates had their sentences turned into life imprisonment. This saved their lives. But not their freedom. Life in prison still meant dying behind bars. Just slower. Some felt relief. "I won't be executed." Others felt trapped. "I'll never go home." Both feelings were heavy. For some men, hope shifted. From, "I will be freed," to, "I will survive," to, "I will stay sane," to, "I will be human." They focused on small victories. One more letter sent. One more lawyer visit. One more hearing. One more chance. But the system was powerful. And individuals were small. Fighting it felt like fighting the ocean. With bare hands. Still, many tried. Because giving up meant accepting death of the soul. And in the final chapter, we will see what happens after years on death row. What it does to a man. What remains. and what the outside world never sees. After death row, what remains when the waiting ends? For many men inside Goulburn, death row did not end with execution. It ended quietly, with a letter, with a decision, with a change in sentence, with a simple notice. Your sentence has been reduced. Your status has changed. You are being transferred. No music, no celebration, no applause, just words on paper. And yet, those words changed everything. When Australia stopped executions, many death row inmates were moved. Some were sent to life imprisonment units. Some were transferred to other prisons. Some were placed in long-term maximum security. They were alive, but their lives were still controlled, still limited, still locked. For some men, this news brought relief. They slept better. They breathed easier. They stopped jumping at every sound. They no longer feared being taken away in the night. They were safe from execution. But safety did not mean happiness. Years on death row had changed them. Deeply, quietly, forever. Many had forgotten how to live normally. They forgot how to talk freely, how to laugh loudly, how to trust easily, how to make simple choices. When given small freedom, they felt scared. Some were allowed to mix with other prisoners, to walk in bigger yards, to join work programs, to attend classes. But even this felt strange. They were used to isolation, used to silence, used to being alone. Crowds made them nervous. Noise made them anxious. Arguments made them panic. Some chose to stay quiet, to stay hidden, to stay in corners, because that felt safe. Men who were released after wrongful convictions suffered even more. They walked out into a world they no longer recognized. New technology, new rules, new streets, new faces. Old friends were gone. Parents were buried. Children were strangers. Jobs were impossible to find. People looked at them with doubt. Were you really innocent? Some communities never accepted them. They were free, but still imprisoned by the past. Many struggled with mental health, nightmares, fear, depression, anger, guilt. Even if they were innocent, even if they were forgiven, even if they were free, the prison stayed inside them. Some became activists. They spoke about justice, about mistakes, about human rights, about prison reform. They warned society. This can happen to anyone. Be careful who you judge. Others disappeared. They changed names, moved far away, tried to forget, tried to start again. But memories followed. For those still serving life sentences, days continued. Wake up, count, eat, wait, sleep, repeat. Years passed. Friends died in prison. Guards retired. New inmates arrived. The world changed. But they stayed. Some found peace in small things. Gardening programs, library work, teaching younger inmates, helping others read and write. They became mentors. They tried to give meaning to lost time. Some built strong faith. Some found forgiveness. Some wrote books. Some painted. Some made music. Creativity became freedom. In small ways. Families also carried scars. Mothers aged waiting. Fathers died worrying. Children grew up without parents. Wives lived lonely lives. Prison punished more than one person. It punished entire families. Goulburn itself became a symbol. A place of fear. A place of stories. A place where justice and mistakes crossed paths. Where hope and despair lived together. Where human strength was tested every day. Former guards also remembered. Some had nightmares. Some felt guilty. Some felt proud. Some felt empty. Working around death row changed them too. Because watching people wait for death is not normal. It is heavy. It stays in your heart. One former officer once said, "You leave work, but it never leaves you." Today, many people pass by Goulburn without knowing its history. They drive past. They live nearby. They shop. They laugh. They live normal lives. Not knowing what happened behind those walls. Not knowing how many tears fell there. How many prayers were whispered. How many dreams were broken. How many lives were changed. This story is not about making excuses. It is not about justifying crime. It is about understanding reality. About seeing prisoners as humans. With fears. With mistakes. With regrets. With hopes. Some were guilty. Some were innocent. All were human. And inside Goulburn death row, human strength was tested in ways few people will ever understand. But this story is not finished yet. Because behind every file, every cell, every sentence, there are still untold stories, secrets, voices, truths, waiting to be heard. And next, we can go deeper into specific real cases, real names, real lives, and real moments that shocked Australia. Real cases, real lives, and the stories that shook Australia. Behind every cell door in Goulburn, there was a name, a face, a family, a history, not just a number, not just a file, a real human life. Some of these stories reached the public. Some were hidden for years. Some changed how Australians saw justice forever. And some are still debated today. One of the most famous cases connected to Goulburn was the story of a man who said he was innocent from the first day. From the moment he was arrested, he repeated the same words. "I didn't do it. I was not there. You have the wrong person." But witnesses pointed at him. Police believed they had their man. The court believed them. And he was sent to death row. Inside Goulburn, he wrote letters every week. To judges. To lawyers. To newspapers. To human rights groups. He begged them to look again. 4 years, no one listened. Other inmates saw him crying at night. Praying. Reading the same court papers again and again. Looking for one mistake. One detail. One opening. After more than 10 years, new evidence appeared. A witness admitted lying. A statement was proven false. The case was reopened. And finally, he was released. He walked out free. But he had lost his youth. Lost his parents. Lost his health. He once said, "They gave me freedom back. But they cannot give me my life back." Another case involved a man who admitted his crime. He had killed during a robbery. In anger. In fear. In panic. He did not deny it. In court, he said, "I did something terrible. I live with it every day." He accepted his sentence. On death row, he became quiet. He avoided trouble. He helped other prisoners read. He shared food. He wrote letters to the victim's family. Apologizing. Not asking for forgiveness. Just saying sorry. Some families replied. Some didn't. Both hurt. When execution stopped, his sentence became life imprisonment. He stayed in prison. But many guards respected him. They said, "He took responsibility. He changed. He tried to be better." His story showed that people can grow, even in the darkest places. There was also the story of a young man who confessed under pressure. Police questioned him for many hours. No lawyer. No rest. No family. He was tired. Scared. Confused. They told him, "If you confess, it will be easier. If you don't, it will be worse." So he confessed, even though he did not fully understand what he was doing. Later, he tried to take it back. But it was too late. The court accepted it. He was sentenced. On death row, he kept saying, "I was stupid. I was scared. I didn't know." Years later, experts reviewed the case. They said the confession was unreliable. It was forced. It was unfair. His sentence was reduced. But again, years were already gone. Some inmates became famous inside prison, not for crimes, but for wisdom, for kindness, for leadership. Older prisoners advised younger ones, "Don't fight. Don't gamble. Don't join gangs. Focus on surviving." They became prison elders, respected, protected. Their words saved lives. Some cases brought public anger. Newspapers wrote headlines. People protested. Politicians argued. The death penalty became a national debate. Is it right? Is it fair? Can courts ever be perfect? What if they make mistakes? These questions grew louder, until Australia finally said, "No more. No more executions. No more death sentences." It was a turning point, a moment that changed history. But for men already on death row, the past could not be erased. Some became symbols, used in books, in documentaries, in court reforms. Their suffering helped change the system. But they paid the price. One former inmate later said, "I'm glad things changed. But I wish they changed earlier." Many stories from Goulburn were never recorded. Men who died quietly, who lost their minds, who gave up, who never had lawyers, who never had support, who faded away. No headlines, no cameras, just forgotten. Those stories still live in old files. Dusty shelves, locked rooms, waiting. And this is why Goulburn matters. Not as a building, but as a lesson, a warning, a reminder that justice must be careful, because when it fails, it destroys lives. And next, we will look at the hidden side, the secrets, the things that were never meant to be seen, the things guards and prisoners rarely talk about, the hidden side, secrets, silence, and unseen suffering. Inside Goulburn death row, there was the official story, the rules, the schedules, the reports, the paperwork, the version written in government files. But there was also another story, one that was never written down, one that lived in whispers, in looks, in quiet moments, in things people were afraid to say. This was the hidden side of death row, the side most outsiders never saw. One of the biggest secrets was how much pain was hidden. Not physical pain, but emotional pain. Guards were trained to watch for violence, for fighting, for escape attempts. But sadness was harder to see. Loneliness had no alarm. Depression had no siren. Many inmates suffered in silence. Some stopped eating. Some stopped talking. Some stayed in bed all day, staring at walls. No energy, no interest, no hope. To outsiders, they looked fine. Inside, they were breaking. Mental health support was limited. There were counselors, psychologists, but too many prisoners, too few staff. Appointments were short, sometimes months apart. Some inmates waited weeks just to talk. By the time help arrived, it was often too late. Another hidden truth was self-harm. Some men hurt themselves quietly, cutting, hitting walls, starving, not to die, but to feel something, to release pain, to control at least one thing in their lives. Guards tried to stop it, but they could not see everything. Blankets hid wounds, sleeves hid scars, Smiles hid suffering. Some prisoners attempted suicide. Late at night. When no one was watching. When hope felt gone. Some were saved. Some were not. Those who survived were sent to isolation. For safety. But isolation often made things worse. More silence. More darkness. More loneliness. Another secret was fear of other prisoners. Even on death row, bullying happened. Stronger inmates sometimes threatened weaker ones. Took food. Took clothes. Took space. It was rarely reported. Snitching was dangerous. So victims stayed quiet. They endured. They suffered. They adapted. Some guards knew. Some pretended not to. Because paperwork was easier than problems. There were also secrets among guards. Some struggled mentally. Watching men suffer every day was heavy. Some drank too much after work. Some became distant from family. Some became angry. Some became numb. To survive, they shut off emotions. They treated prisoners like objects. Not because they were evil, but because feeling too much hurt. Some guards crossed lines. They insulted inmates. Humiliated them. Used power unfairly. Not all, but some. Prisoners rarely complained. Complaints went nowhere. And retaliation was feared. So silence ruled. Another hidden side was secret kindness. Not every story was dark. Some guards secretly helped. They passed extra food. They gave longer phone calls. They delivered letters faster. They checked in quietly. How are you holding up? These small acts meant everything. Some inmates shared with each other. Food. Soap. Books. Advice. Support. They formed quiet brotherhoods. No gangs. No violence. Just survival together. Late at night, some talked through walls. About childhood. About dreams. About favorite meals. About beaches. About football. About freedom. They reminded each other. We are still human. Faith meetings also hid deep stories. Men confessed. Cried. Asked for forgiveness. Found peace. Some forgave themselves. Some never did. Another secret was how often mistakes happened. Lost paperwork. Missed court dates. Wrong information. Files mixed up. One error could delay an appeal for years. Some prisoners discovered mistakes by accident. Too late. No apology. No repair. Just more waiting. There were also stories of friendship between guards and inmates. Rare. Careful. Hidden. A nod. A smile. A quiet, stay strong. Rules said distance. But humanity sometimes broke rules. Finally, there was the secret of fear. Guards feared riots. Prisoners feared attacks. Administrators feared bad publicity. Everyone feared change. Fear controlled decisions. Fear shaped behavior. Fear kept silence alive. So many stories were buried. Never told. Never recorded. Never healed. They stayed inside these walls. Like ghosts. And they still remain today. Because prisons change slowly. And pain lasts long. And next, we will enter the final layer. What death row teaches about society. About justice. About us. And why this story matters to everyone. What death row teaches us. Justice, humanity, and the price of power. When people hear the words, death row, they often think about crime first. They think about punishment. They think about anger. They think about fear. They think, they did something bad, so they deserve something bad. But Goulburn Death Row teaches something deeper. Something harder. Something uncomfortable. It teaches what happens when power meets human life. when governments decide who lives, when courts decide who is right, when systems decide who is forgotten. Inside Goulburn, every inmate learned one truth: the law is strong, but it is not perfect. Judges are trained, but they are human. Police work hard, but they make mistakes. Witnesses speak, but they can lie. Lawyers argue, but they can fail. And when even one part fails, a life can be destroyed, sometimes forever. Death row showed how dangerous mistakes can be. In normal life, a mistake can mean losing money, losing a job, losing time. On death row, a mistake could mean losing life. That is why many Australians began asking questions. Hard questions. What if the court is wrong? What if evidence is fake? What if someone is innocent? What if racism, class, or poverty affects decisions? What if rich people get better lawyers? What if poor people are forgotten? These questions changed the country. They made people think. They made people protest. They made people demand change. And slowly, change came. Executions stopped. Sentences were reviewed. Laws were improved. Not perfect, but better. Goulburn also taught that punishment does not erase pain. Victims lost loved ones. Families were broken. No prison sentence could fix that. No execution could heal that. Killing the criminal did not bring back the dead. It did not erase memories. It did not remove grief. Many victim families later said, "We wanted justice, but we also wanted peace." And death did not give them peace. Some even spoke against executions. They said, "More death is not the answer." Inside prison, inmates learned about responsibility. Some accepted their guilt. They worked to change. They apologized. They tried to be better. They learned that one bad moment can ruin many lives, including their own. Others learned about forgiveness. Some forgave the system. Some forgave victims. Some forgave themselves. Some never could. But the struggle was real. Goulburn showed that humans are complex. Not monsters. Not angels. Just people who made choices. Some terrible. Some stupid. Some tragic. Society often wants simple stories. Good versus bad. Right versus wrong. But prison shows life is messy. Complicated. Painful. Gray. Not black and white. It also showed how easy it is to forget prisoners. Out of sight. Out of mind. Behind walls. Behind gates. Behind laws. People stopped thinking about them. Until a scandal. Until a documentary. Until a mistake. Then suddenly, everyone cares. For a moment. Then moves on. But prisoners stay. They keep waiting. Goulburn teaches that justice needs care, attention, transparency, kindness, because power without care becomes cruelty, and rules without compassion become weapons. It teaches that every person deserves fairness, not freedom, not excuses, but fairness, a fair trial, a fair lawyer, a fair chance, a fair voice, nothing more. Nothing less. Most of all, it teaches that society is judged by how it treats the weakest, the hated, the forgotten, the guilty, the accused, because it is easy to be kind to good people. It is hard to be fair to broken ones, and that is the true test. This story is not over. There are still voices unheard, files unopened, truths buried, lives waiting, and in the next chapter, we will return to the present, to what Goulburn is today, to what changed, to what stayed the same, and to what the future may hold. Goulburn today, what changed, what remains, and what lies ahead. Today, Goulburn Correctional Centre still stands. The walls are still tall. The fences are still strong. The cameras still watch. The gates still open and close. From the outside, it looks the same. But inside, some things have changed. And some things never will. There is no more death row in Australia. No more executions. No more official waiting for death. That chapter of history is closed. On paper, in law, in government records. But in memory, it is still alive. Many of the old cells are now used for high-security prisoners. Men who are considered dangerous. Men who need close supervision. Men serving long sentences. Life sentences. Decades-long sentences. They now live in spaces once used for death row. They sleep in the same rooms. Walk the same hallways. Hear the same doors. The same keys. The same echoes. Some say they can feel the past. Like sadness in the air. Like stories trapped in the walls. Older guards still remember. They talk quietly about the old days. About when things were darker. About when fear was stronger. About when lives depended on court papers. Younger guards learn about it in training. In short lessons. In short history talks. But they did not live it. They did not feel it. So it feels distant. Like a story. Not reality. Modern Goulburn has more programs now. Education. Job training. Mental health support. Counseling. Rehabilitation programs. Anger management. Drug treatment. Life skills. The goal is different. Before, it was punishment. Now, it is also preparation. Preparing inmates to live better. To return to society. To not come back. But success is mixed. Some prisoners change. They learn. They grow. They leave and never return. Others fail. They fall back into crime. They return. The cycle continues. Prison is still hard. Still lonely. Still strict. Still controlled. Still stressful. Cells are still small. Food is still basic. Freedom is still limited. Privacy is still rare. Time is still slow. Mental health problems are still common. Depression, anxiety, anger, trauma. They did not disappear with death row. They just changed shape. Families still suffer. Children still visit parents behind glass. Partners still wait for phone calls. Mothers still cry. Distance still hurts. Stigma still follows. Society still judges. Former prisoners still struggle to find jobs. Still face distrust. Still carry records. Still carry shame. Even after paying their sentence. The past follows them. Technology has changed some things. More cameras. Better tracking. Digital records. Better evidence storage. This reduces some mistakes. But not all. Humans still run the system. And humans still make errors. Lawyers still miss deadlines. Police still misjudge situations. Judges still interpret differently. Perfection does not exist. Public opinion is also changing. More people now care about prison conditions. About rehabilitation. About fairness. About mental health. About second chances. Documentaries. News stories. Online videos. Like this one. They open eyes. They start conversations. They force questions. Is prison working? Is punishment enough? Is rehabilitation possible? How do we reduce crime? How do we protect society without destroying lives? These questions are still being debated. No final answers yet. Goulburn is now both a prison and a symbol, a reminder of where Australia has been and where it is trying to go, a reminder that systems can change, that laws can improve, that mistakes can be admitted, even if slowly, even if painfully. 4 former death row inmates still alive. Goulburn is a scar, a memory, a chapter they can never erase. For families, it is a place of loss. For guards, it is a workplace full of history. For society, it is a lesson. And for the future, it is a warning. Never become careless with power. Never rush judgment. Never forget humanity. Because once lost, it is very hard to get back. And next, we will bring everything together. The past, the present, the people, the pain, the lessons. In the final chapter of this story, the final truth, voices from behind the walls. Inside Goulburn, long after the doors closed, long after the cameras stopped recording, long after visitors went home, voices still remained. Not loud voices, not shouting voices, quiet voices, broken voices, hopeful voices, forgotten voices. These were the voices of men who lived on death row, men who waited, men who feared, men who prayed, men who changed, men who survived. Most people never heard them, because prisons are designed to hide stories, to keep pain out of sight, to keep problems invisible, to keep society comfortable. But comfort has a cost. It costs truth. It costs understanding. It costs empathy. One former inmate once said, "People think prison is just walls and guards. But it's really about time. Time you never get back." Another said, "I didn't fear dying most days. I feared being forgotten." Many men on death row were not afraid of death itself. They were afraid of disappearing, of becoming nothing, of being erased from memory, of having no one say their name, no one remember their face, no one care. Some kept diaries so they would exist on paper. Some wrote poems. Some drew pictures. Some carved tiny shapes from soap. Some saved letters. These were proofs of life. Proofs that they were here, that they mattered, that they lived. Many inmates wanted one thing more than freedom. They wanted understanding. Not excuses. Not pity. Just understanding. To be seen as humans. Not monsters. Not headlines. Not case numbers. Just people who made choices. Some terrible. Some foolish. Some tragic. Some unforgivable. But still human. Some asked, "If my worst mistake defines me forever, then what is the point of changing?" That question still matters today. Society often says, "People don't change." Goulburn showed that some do. Slowly, painfully, quietly, without applause, without reward, just because they want to be better. Others never changed. They stayed angry, bitter, dangerous. Prison could not fix them. Because prison alone cannot fix anyone. Change needs support, guidance, opportunity, patience. Without those, punishment becomes a loop. Over and over. One mistake. One sentence. One life lost. The families of victims also had voices. They spoke of loss, of empty chairs, of birthdays without loved ones, of unanswered questions, of lifelong grief. Their pain was real. Their anger was real. Their suffering mattered. Justice had to care for them too. True justice was never about revenge. It was about truth, safety, healing, and fairness. Goulburn Death Row showed what happens when justice forgets this. When speed is chosen over care. When punishment is chosen over understanding. When power is chosen over responsibility. Mistakes happen. Lives break. Trust disappears. But it also showed something else. Human strength. Even in cages. Even in darkness. even in despair. Some men kept kindness. Some kept faith. Some kept dignity. Some kept hope. Against all odds. That is powerful. That is rare. That is worth remembering. Today, those walls still stand. But the voices are fading. Men grow old. Files gather dust. Stories disappear. Unless they are told. Unless they are shared. Unless people listen. That is why this story matters. Not to shock. Not to entertain. But to remind. To teach. To warn. To humanize. Because one day, any system can fail. Any court can be wrong. Any life can change in one moment. And when that happens, we will all hope for fairness. We will all hope for mercy. We will all hope for understanding. The men of Goulburn once hoped for the same. Some received it. Some didn't. But all deserved it. And their voices still deserve to be heard. Tying everything together. And now, as this story comes to an end, take one last moment and think about everything you have heard. The metal doors, the silent hallways, the lonely cells, the long nights, the fear, the waiting, the hope, the mistakes, the lives changed forever. Goulburn Death Row was not just a prison. It was a mirror showing what happens when power meets humanity, when justice moves too fast, when voices are ignored, when people are reduced to numbers. Behind those walls were not just criminals. There were sons, fathers, brothers, husbands, children who grew up without parents, parents who died waiting, families who never healed. Some men were guilty. Some were innocent. Some were lost. Some were broken. Some were changed forever. But every one of them was human. And that is the truth most people forget. Because it is easy to judge from far away. It is easy to point fingers. It is easy to say, that could never be me. Until one mistake, one bad decision, one wrong accusation, one unfair trial, changes everything. Goulburn teaches us this. Justice must be strong. But it must also be careful. It must protect society. But it must never forget compassion. It must punish crime. But it must respect life. Because once humanity is lost, no system can replace it. The walls of Goulburn still stand. But the lessons inside them are more important than ever. They remind us to question, to think, to care, to listen, to demand fairness. For everyone. Not just for the popular. Not just for the powerful. But for the forgotten. For the silent. For the locked away. For the unseen. So the next time you hear about a crime, a trial, a sentence, remember this story. Remember the faces you never saw. Remember the voices you never heard. Remember the lives behind the headlines. Because justice is not just about punishment. It is about truth. It is about responsibility. It is about mercy. It is about making sure that no one is destroyed by mistakes. This was Goulburn Death Row, the harsh reality of Australian inmates. A story of pain. A story of survival. A story of warning. A story of humanity. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it made you see things differently, then don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. So more people can hear these voices. So more people can learn. So more people can care. Because some stories are too important to ever be forgotten.